Half a day students, for today's lesson is actually a pretty simple one. I have quite a few examples, but there's nothing too difficult for this because we're just applying things that we've covered in the past sections. We're adding one little part of it. So we're going to be solving quadratic equations. First thing we're going to have to familiarize ourselves with is one, to review how to solve equations, the zero property, and then we'll look at putting things into standard form and then solving by factoring. So if you need some reviewing on factoring, I'd watch one of the videos for factoring. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is review these simple equations. When we're solving an equation, we just want to isolate our variable. So in this one, our variable is x, so to get it by itself, I'm going to use inverse operations to remove everything else on that side of the equation. So I have this plus 3. Oh, and I forgot to mention that I cannot find my stylus, so this one's not going to be a very pretty video, but you know, it's fine. Our fingers will do fine when we don't have stylus. So we're going to subtract 3 from each side in order to get our variable isolated. We are now, this is going to cancel out. X is equal to -3. On this bottom one, we'll actually have a two-step one, so I'm going to get rid of everything that's not touching my variable. So I'm going to get rid of this -1 by adding it to both sides. That will cancel that. We have 2x is equal to 1. Now I'm going to get rid of that 2. Since it's 2 times x, I'll divide. And again, this is just a review, right? Very simple stuff. X is equal to 1/2. Okay, now we're going to go into looking at the zero property. So the zero property just states that if I have a product of two factors, so if I have a times b, and if that is equal to 0, if a times b is equal to 0, then either a is 0 or b is 0. And this is because if I multiply two things and I get 0, at least one of those things has to be 0. Like, yeah, that's just how it is, right? So either a or b, or both of them, have to be 0 in order to multiply together to get 0. And we'll be using this property when we solve a factored equation. So to solve quadratic equations, and when I say a quadratic equation, I mean an equation with the highest degree, with a degree of 2. So I have an x squared as my highest degree variable. So they must be equal to 0. So what that means is I want everything to be on one side. I want to move all the numbers to one side, have it equal to 0, and then I'll put it in order of degree. I have x squared, x, and then a number. And this could be working with other variables. Maybe you use n, p, q, whatever. So the first step is always going to be to put it into a standard form. If I had this, 4x squared equals 3x plus 2, I might move everything to the left side, right? So I'll subtract 3x, subtract 2. So I'll have 4x squared minus 3x minus 2 is equal to 0. Once I put them all to one side, they're changing signs, so I'm moving to the other side because I'm subtracting them over, right? And then they'll cancel the right side. From here, this is something I could actually factor and solve, but we'll go into that in the next one. So for this topic, we're solving quadratic equations by factoring. There are other ways to solve quadratic equations. We're going to get into that further in the semester. This is the best and easiest one, I believe. So we'll just start with this one. X squared minus x minus 6. We said that we want it to be in standard form. So standard form is where it's in order and it equals to 0. So this one equals to 0 and I have x squared, x, and then the number, it's in standard form. So from here I can work. So what we're going to do is factor the left side so that it comes into a product of two binomials. Okay, so x squared minus x minus 6. I have a minus sign there. I know because of the way I know how to factor. I'm looking at factors of 6 that give me a difference of -1. So maybe we're at a point now where we can factor very easily, where I can know this is going to be x minus 3 times x plus 2 is equal to 0. And now, because of my zero property, and again my zero property states that If AB equals to 0, then A is 0 or B is 0, right? So if I have x minus 3 times x minus 2 is equal to 0, that means that one of those, at least one of those, can be 0 or has to be 0, right? So what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to state that, okay, x minus 3 is equal to 0 or x plus 2 is equal to 0. So I know one of these factors has to be 0. So what I'm going to do is solve for x when each of these are 0, and then those are going to be my possible values of x. So this x minus 3 is equal to 0. I'll add 3 to each side to get x is equal to positive 3. For this one on the right, I'll subtract 2 from each side to get x is equal to negative 2. So we have two solutions now. You can either write them out like this, or maybe you might write x is equal to 3, negative 2. Either way is fine. But factor and then equate each of those products, or each of those factors, into 0, solve for x. Something like this, a little bit harder to factor, so we're going to try factoring this. It's in standard form already. We have x squared x, the number, and then it's equal to 0. So I'll factor this. Factors of 72, that will give me a sum of 17. Okay, so I'm actually going to use 8 and 9, because 8 times 9 is 72. 8 plus 9 is 17. They're both going to be positive. And I suggest some students, they actually jump straight to giving values of x. So they'll say, okay, x is equal to 8 and 9. And you'll see right now why that doesn't work. Because when I factor, it's going to be x plus 8 times x plus 9 is equal to 0. Using my 0 property, I can see that x plus 8 is equal to 0, or x plus 9 is equal to 0, right? Okay, from there, I'll subtract 8 from each side. X is negative 8, or negative 9, right? So that's why I say don't jump straight into giving the answer. You'll want to do that factoring first. Because just because I know you know how to factor, a lot of students, they make that mistake by not solving for x once they factor. So they'll jump straight from here, say, okay, it's 8 and 9. But obviously you can see from here it's not 8 and 9, it's negative 8 and negative 9. From here, you'll notice we have two terms. This one's a lot easier to factor, and I really like this one actually, so we'll move it all to one side. I like to move it to where x squared is positive. So I'm going to move that 9x to the right side, so by subtracting it. So we have 0 is equal to 3x squared minus 9x. From here, we're going to factor it how we do, not with the trinomial, right? So factoring binomials, I'm going to take out what they have in common. 3x squared and 9x are both divisible by 3x, right? So I'm taking out 3x. Then I'm left with x minus 3. 0 equals x minus 3. And so this looks a little bit different from my last one, but this is really just a product of 3x and x minus 3. So I'm going to separate that again, equate them each to 0, and then solve for x. So 3x is equal to 0. Okay, if I divide by 3, x is 0. So, or x minus 3 is equal to 0. Dividing by 3 here, we're left with x equals 0, or x equals positive 3. Again, another way to write it, you can just write x equals 0, comma 3. Order of these does not matter. Here we have the same thing, but I might want to move it to the left side because a squared is positive on the left side. So I'll be left with 6a squared minus 4a is equal to 0. Factoring out, these two have in common 2a. I'm left with 3a minus 2 is equal to 0. From here, we are going to equate each of these to 0. 2a equals 0. 3a minus 2 is equal to 0. Solving for a, divide by 2, a is 0. Or 3a minus 2, so this is a 2-step. I'll have to move the 2 to the other side. 3a equals 2. dividing by 3, a is equal to 2 over 3. Okay, so again, you should have 2 answers for pretty much all of these. And yeah, looking at something like this, okay, it's factored already, but does it equal to 0? That 0 property only works when you have the product of factors is equal to 0. Right now we have it equal to negative 24. So for this, what I'm actually going to have to do is FOIL, multiply out this x minus 2, this x plus 8, and then move that 24 to the other side to make it equal to 0, and then factor it again. So first thing I'm going to do is multiply this out because it doesn't equal to 0. So x squared times x first is going to be x squared outside plus 8x inside minus 2x last minus 16 equals negative 24. Combining like terms, I'm left with x squared plus 6x minus 16 equals negative 24. Now I'm able to move everything to one side. I'll add that 24 to the other side. Plus 24, that cancels, plus 24. 24 minus 16 is going to be 8, so I have x squared plus 6x plus 8 is equal to 0. This is one that's actually very easy to factor. Factors of 8 that'll give me a sum of 6 are 4 and 2. So this factors 2, x plus 4 times x plus 2 is equal to 0. Solving for each of these, I can say that x plus 4 equals 0, or x plus 2 is equal to 0. My values of x are negative 4 and negative 2. So whenever you have a product of binomials equal to a non-zero, multiply it out, put it in standard form, and factor, and then find your x values. Our last example is a very similar one. I'm going to multiply it out. We have x squared plus 3x plus 1x plus 3 is equal to 24. Combining like terms, x squared plus 4x plus 3 equals 24. Subtracting 24 from each side, x squared plus 4x minus 21 equals 0. Factors of 21 that will give me a difference of 4 is going to be 7 and 3. So 7 is going to be positive. This will factor out to x plus 7 times x minus 3 is equal to 0. And okay, I might actually jump straight to, from here, once it's factored, I already know that's going to be negative 7 and positive 3. So the more that you do this, you can actually skip that final step in the end where you equate each of them and then solve, because if it's just like this, it's very easy. I'll just choose the opposite sign of the one on the right, right? But if I have a number in front, I'll divide it by that. But that's it for today. Hopefully it's nothing too difficult. I don't think it will be. Again, this is the first half of topic 13. I'll be sending out the next one. I'm going to try to send it out before Monday, but we'll see how that goes. But otherwise, I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you in class soon.